All right, well, hello everyone. Welcome to our high school small group Bible study again. I'm here with Betty and Noah for week two, essentially, of our small group, talking about the Center of the Universe series that we've been studying on actually for the past several weeks. Last week we talked about point one, that is Jesus at the core, what that looks like in our life and how that's referenced in Scripture. We talked about Colossians 1 of where really the Bible tells us that everything was created for and by Jesus, and ultimately that Jesus holds it all together. And so because of that picture, we kind of see Jesus at the core. He's at the center of all of it. So we spent some time going over some questions and discussion points about what that looks like in our own life. So I hope you all were able to spend some good time over the past week of seeing what that looks like. For you, Jesus being at the core as we prepare to get to point two tonight.
Going into point two tonight, once you put Jesus at the center of your life, he pulls you into he allows you to serve. Serving means could be anything in ministry, doing upward, doing anything that he calls you to do.
Right. Yeah. And that's a good transitional point and conversation piece, because I know for me, when I first was looking at the study and I seen this point too, Jesus allows us to serve. Honestly, one of the first questions that come to my mind is, how does that relate? How does that relate to this study? And that's when it kind of hit me that, naturally our tendency is to serve ourselves. Our sin, we want things to be our way based off of our likes and dislikes and things that we're comfortable with. And so, just naturally we want to serve ourselves. But with Jesus being at the center of our life, all of a sudden we should start to pick up on some of his tendencies, and that is to ultimately serve others, because we know that the life of Jesus was based off of that very fact. It's the whole reason he came here to this earth was to serve others and ultimately be the ultimate sacrifice to reconcile us back to our original purpose with God.
Yeah, and God doesn't call us to be fake versions of ourselves. He wants us to be the best version of ourselves, and the way that we do that is through an active relationship with him, because we honestly can't do it on our own. And with that, the true humility of it is finding with that, true humility is found by having an accurate understanding of our need for Christ in our lives, and an accurate view of our identity in him, who, as people who bear the image of God.
Yeah. And just looking at those key points there is like, it's ultimately something we got to embrace. Like, we have to, just physically and spiritually embrace this idea of him being at the center and really humbling ourselves to walk as he walked and to do as he did. And I think that's a point that we often overlook when we look at being a servant or getting to serve others, that it's actually it's a privilege. And that's why I love how our study says that Jesus allows us to serve. To me, the key word there is allows. I mean, that is something that we get to be a part of something that is so much bigger than ourselves. And I got to thinking, like, how would I describe this and how would we talk about it? And so, it's like we have the privilege and opportunity to walk hand in hand with him through this. And so I thought, man, like, what would that look like for somebody? Think about these, like some passion that you've had, a desire, a dream, to be like somebody or to do something like somebody else has done. And then you get the opportunity to actually be with that person to learn from them. I mean, me growing up, I absolutely just loved basketball. I mean, everything about my life was about basketball. Even after opening my gifts on Christmas morning, like, I wanted to go outside and shoot ball. And of course, right now, I mean, everybody's excited to watch The Last Dance on ESPN, the story of Michael Jordan and the Bulls trying to make that run for the second three-peat. It's a big deal. And like, I'm reliving my glory days by watching this show, because that was me. I mean, that's I desired to be like Michael Jordan. I was like, wow, how cool would that have been to be able to go to the games, go to his practices, have these one-on-one like teaching moments with somebody that you idolized, you know, and you looked up to. And I thought, man, how awesome would that be to get to be right there with somebody like that, you know?
Like with mine was football.
Yeah.
Mine was Reggie White. He went to University of Tennessee during college. Then eventually he got picked up by Tampa Bay, and then Green Bay picked him up. But people don't know much about him. They used to call him the minister of defense.
Yeah.
In other words, that every Sunday morning he was preaching. He was a preacher. Every Sunday, every Wednesday, that's what he would. So my goal was to be like him.
Yeah.
Play football and then preach and do what he was doing.
Yeah, and then how awesome would it have been to be able to just be right beside him? You know, I think that's the whole idea is like, man, you've got these desires, and then you have that opportunity to be right beside somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's us. When we talk about how Jesus allows us to serve, you know, we're right there, like hand in hand, right beside him in these moments, you know. And so ultimately, you know, that leads us to the very fact that, well, what was that for Jesus? And of course, that was his mission. Mm-hmm. And when we think about serving others, you know, that's something that I would naturally gravitate to is think about, you know, opportunities to serve other people, whether it's in a ministry, you know, like Upward, like we did years ago, and being able to serve other people through that, or the mission field, mm-hmm. you know, and how that, you know, just how does that look and feel, you know, to somebody to really start to get to experience something that, you know, hey, we're almost in these footsteps of Jesus, you know, in this moment.
Yeah.
So, I think Paul does a really good job of describing this. It's actually your Bible verse reference for point 2, and it comes from Philippians chapter 2, verses 1 through 10. I'm going to read the New Living Translation version of this. It says, having the attitude of Christ. Is there any encouragement from belonging to Christ? Any comfort from his love? Any fellowship together in the Spirit? Are your hearts tender and compassionate? Then make me truly happy by agreeing wholeheartedly with each other, loving one another, and working together with one mind and one purpose. And you get to that point, it's like, that's so difficult to do. Mm-hmm. So difficult to do. But it can be done. He says, don't be selfish, right? Don't try to impress others. I mean, we're cutting somewhere here now. We're getting deep. Be humble, thinking of others better than yourselves. Don't look out for your own interest, but take an interest in others too. This way you have the same attitude that Jesus Christ had. And before we go on, I just want to point out, like, those are some tough things. Mm-hmm. Like, you read this and you're like, man, I don't know that I can do that. You know, I really don't think I can. And that's the great thing about this, what we're wanting to talk about is he's right here with us to go through it. Like, he's saying, hey, I've been there, I've done that. Come alongside of me, and I'm going to show you how it's done. And Paul continues on here, and he gives us a description of how Jesus done this, right? Mm-hmm. He says, though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He took the humble position of a slave or servant and was born as a human being. But not only did he stop there, when he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in obedience to God. And we know that obedience is greater than sacrifice any day. Mm-hmm. And so he humbled himself in obedience to God and died a criminal's death, not committing any crime whatsoever, the criminal's death, a death on the cross. Therefore, God elevated him to a place of the highest honor and gave him the name above all names, that at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow on heaven and earth and underneath. And you know, that's the biggest thing to realize, is that our natural self, we're self-centered, and we want to put ourselves first. Mm-hmm. And Jesus had every right to put himself first, but he put himself last as a servant. And because of his obedience, God flipped it around and placed him right back up there where he's supposed to be. you know. And our life can look like that. I think that's what's so crazy when we look at this whole servanthood, because it's such a delicate balance, right? I know some of our material even reference this being a glorified doormat, you know, and I know that's hard. A lot of people struggle with it. I struggle with it. You know, it's almost like the whole thing of, you know, forgive those who persecute you, turn the other cheek, you know. Well, I only got two cheeks, you know. You know, and it can. There's a balance. Like, how often do you just lay down completely for somebody else versus standing up for, you know, who you are and what you believe? And I think that's difficult a lot of times for us to grasp, is that, you know, Paul says, I become all things to all people for one purpose. That's so somebody can see Jesus and know Jesus, you know. And so what is that going to look like and take in our life, you know?
But if you put Jesus, like you're saying, if you put Jesus at the core of your life, in the center of your universe, and you truly know you're saved, you truly know all that, He'll let you serve. He'll be, you're his servant.
Yeah.
He's going to let his light shine through you to other people and say, well, they got Jesus in them.
Right.
People will see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
Because we're called to be like Jesus. That's the whole goal, is being Christ followers. And if we want to be like him, we got to be willing to live and serve just like he did.
Right.
Humbly and putting others first.
Yeah. And it can. I mean, there's a part of that that's really difficult, and there's another part of that is, you know, such a blessing, you know, that you gain from it for sure. So, well, as we conclude our Bible study time with all of you, we're gonna go through these last these three questions when we talk about point 2. Jesus allows us to serve. And so question 1 would be, what would living your best life look like if it was a snapshot? You know, and that's kind of hard. It's a hard question to answer. And the reference here is this you know, new thing, this hashtag living my best life, where in the best moment of you know what's going on, you take a snapshot of that, and you know, and people think, well, that's it all the time.
Yeah.
And it's really not.
It's not.
You know, and again, are we being self-centered? Are we being Jesus-centered? Right? Is it about us, or is it about others? And I think that's ultimately when we snapshot our life. You know, living our best life should show us serving others, not serving ourselves.
Yeah.
You know?
Especially because, like, with social media, you see, like, only the best part of everybody's life.
Yeah.
And, again, like, God isn't calling us to be that fake version of ourselves, the version that we show to everybody else. He's calling us to be the best version of ourselves. Now, the best version probably isn't going to look like those snapshots.
That's true.
Right.
In God's mind, it's not going to look like those snapshots. It's going to look like you serving others.
Right. You know, and this is, you know, really just totally off script here and not even discussed, but with you saying that makes me think of Jesus and Paul. Like, you take the greatest moments in Jesus' life, and it wasn't about him. It was about others. I mean, you take these living my best life snapshots. You know, we just finished reading through the book of 1 Corinthians, and now we're getting into 2 Corinthians during our family Bible study time, and like, Paul's like, you know, these are light afflictions, and he's talking about, you know, getting imprisoned, you know, and getting lashed and all these, like, just terrible things. And it's like, yeah, that's not a snapshot of living my best life. Like, that's not going to attract many people, you know. But that's the realness of it, and the truth is, hey, I'm serving somebody else. This is not about me. This is about other people. So, question 2 is, do you have a clear picture of what you would want your life to look like after you leave home? You know, are you actively pursuing that? Or are you more of a whatever happens, just kind of happens type person, you know? So, how do you guys feel on that?
Well, I think I'm the only one who can accurately answer this, because I still live at home with my parents.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like, my degree is in sign language. Up until about maybe 2 years ago, I didn't really fully know that sign language was a full language. I didn't know everything about it. and I still don't. And it's one of those things where, like, I have a picture of how I want my life to be. I want to be able to plant churches for the deaf community and help them out, and also be a sign language interpreter for them to bridge that communication gap and serve them in the way that I feel like Jesus would serve them. But it's also like, I mean, at this point, whatever happens, happens. I'm just along for the ride with what God's doing, because it's not, like, whatever my plan is isn't going to be nearly as great as what his plan is going to be.
Right.
Yeah, that's so true. You know, I kind of referenced that a while ago about this delicate balance in life, you know, and that's what I think of when I hear you answer that question, because I know for us, you know, personally, like right now, you know, we're at this crossroads where you want to plan out the details, but at the same time, you know, where are we entrusting God to work out the details, you know? And so I think I'm a little bit of both as far as, you know, I mean, I want to know, I want to pursue the details and what's right, but at the same time, we've got to be able to let what happens, you know, what that looks like, to allow God to have ultimately the control over the situation, you know? So, and then our last one, describe what humility means, or someone you perceive as being very humble. What would it look like for you to be more humble in your own life? And I'm like, that's a hard question.
Yeah,
It's a real hard question to ask or to answer. And I think if we're being honest with each other, one of the main reasons it's hard to answer is because we want to feel like we're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
We want to feel like, well, I've kind of checked off all these things I need to become humble about.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm doing good. But at the core of it, you know, we get to the center of it where Jesus is. There's always something else we can check off that list of saying, yeah, I need to become more humble in this area. You know, maybe I just need to give up my opinion in this area and trust someone else who has more skill in it to make a better choice. You know, whatever that may look like in life. Maybe it's with your parents. Maybe we just need to become humble in the fact of understanding my parents are my parents, and the majority of their decisions should be is for my benefit. And a lot of times it's hard to give up. It's hard to be humble in those type of situations, you know. So that's one of your biggest challenges this week, is to look at that question, you know, and evaluate your life as far as where can I find myself to become more humble. Because the more humble we can get, I think the more Jesus is exposed to other people in and around us and through our life. And so we encourage all of you this week, dive into Philippians 2, verses 1 through 10. Read those, break down those verses, and really ask the Lord to speak to you what that looks like in your own life. And of course, we highly encourage you to continue referencing John chapter 1, especially the first 5 to 10 verses there, of how, you know, it really gives us this detail of, you know, Jesus being in the beginning, through creation, and in the end, and seeing him through that whole process, so you can see him through the whole process of your life as well. So, so with that, just know that, again, we love you. We're praying for you. We definitely miss not getting to hang out with all of you. And until we can talk next week, take care.